Alright, so today we're going to talk about writing karma specs for React components. And so to do this, I built just a little app. And it's mostly just a comment. Let me bring that back up. It mostly just does comments, so you can type a comment in here. Reply, it's got that kind of stuff. You can show it, hide it. And this is a component right here from just this part right here that we're going to write specs for. So this is my component. Just for testing purposes, I made sure it has a constructor, it's receiving props, and it makes, let's see, I think it makes a call to the store. Yeah, the reply calls to the store, or the actions. So to write this prop, the first thing we want to do is import everything we need. We're going to use strict because James likes that. We need React. I copy this actually. And test utils. And then we need to bring in our component as well. Now the first thing that we need to do is describe. You put it in a describe block. And that tells you what you're testing, and that's what runs all your tests. And so we're going to say we're testing the comment component, and then we need to make a little function here. So, and this is where we're going to put all of our stuff. Now inside of here, I'm going to declare a couple variables that we're going to use here in a little bit. Result, props, and button. And then before each of our specs, we run a before each, which is going to set everything up for us. So the first thing we need to do is this component receives props, and that's kind of what sets its state and lets it know what it needs to display. So we need to spoof some of these props. So we're going to assign this variable props to an object, and the props that this thing needs are down here in the prop types. We need comment, home, and about. For now, I think we're only going to use comment as those aren't required right here. And so comments, we're going to say equals an array of comments. Okay. And that should wrap it up for our before each. And then we can start writing specs. Or no, first we have to render it into the component. So our result is going to be test utils dot render into document. You tell it what you just put the React component in there, like you write every other React component. We're going to render comment, and we're going to pass it props. And you can use this little object notation here. Go ahead and throw that in there. So now that that's going to be rendered into our component, we can start testing it. Let me slide my tests over just a little bit. All right, so let's write our first test. If I've got everything lined up right. I am missing that side right there. Okay. So the first thing we're going to test is to make sure that everything that should be displayed is displayed, like we've got everything on our screen. So it displays the comment form. And so some of the tests that we can do is we can go in and test. So we've got a heading in here, and we've got buttons, we've got an input form, and we've got a header. And so just to show you some of the different ways that you can check for that kind of stuff, we'll write a couple of those. So we'll write expect And to actually get the components, you have to do React DOM, find DOM node, and then you pass it in your result. And then we'll check its text content. So that just grabs all the text in the component and puts it out as a string. And so you can see you can do a .toContain and see if it contains the string comments. That'll see if it renders some of our stuff. We'll look over here and see if it passes. And then what we can do is we can also f-describe it, and that'll make sure that only that one runs. There. So we've got one success over here. That guy is running. A couple other things that you can check for with these specs are you can see if it's got the correct buttons and labels and things. So let's make a variable up here called buttons. We'll assign that. And what we're going to do is we're going to find both the buttons, the reply button and the show and hide button. And to do that, you do testutils.scry render DOM components with tag. And that'll give you an array of the components that have that tag. Put the tag in a string. And that should give us all of our buttons. And now what we can do is we can say expect button length to equal 2. And that'll let us know if both of our buttons are there. That one still passes. Great. And there's a couple other things. I'll just paste them in here because they're pretty basic. But you can expect, you can do is defined. So we went and we found input right here. Find render DOM component with tag. Now find render DOM components like scry, but it only returns one thing. If it finds more or less than one DOM component with the parameter you put in here, it'll break the test. It'll throw errors. And so we just find that there's one. And then in here we can also search for a class. We can find render DOM components with a class name. And so that's good for checking if everything is rendered. The next thing we can check for is if it hides a comment. So over here, we've got this button that can show and hide them. And that button uses state. So in order to test that, right here, that button uses this state right here, display. And we're toggling it. And so there's a couple different ways to test it. I'm going to show you a couple different ways so that you can pick whichever one you need for this situation. I think the last one that we use is going to be the best, but there's a couple ways. Well, we'll just do this one. So we can do it hides the comment. And what we're going to do here first is we're going to go ahead and find the comment. Comments equals testutils dot find render DOM components with class result and comments. Let me stretch that out so we can read the whole thing. And then we can do a couple of expect statements to make sure that everything, like initially, the app is in the right spot. So we can expect button of 0, which should be our first button, which is going to be our show and hide button right here. So this is our first button. Here's our second button. So right off the get-go, it should should display hide and then the comments right there the display on those should be block. So we can test for that. Text content. hide, and then you can also reach in and look at styling on components. So if you look at that commenting that we just found, we can go expect comments style display, and that'll reach into that component and take a look at its style and see what it's and get that string back for you. To contain block, and we'll check to see if those run. Yep, right there, hides the comment. Looks like it's running so far. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and test clicking on that button to see if it hides everything. So to do that, you just do test utils dot simulate dot click, and you can do this with any type of action. So if you have a form, you can do a simulate submit, or you can do a simulate mouse over. So now we're just going to stick with click, but we're going to click on our button 0. And now it should change things. So what we're going to do is we're going to expect the button here to, instead of hide, say show. And we're also going to expect, instead of block, the style on our comments component to be none. Save that, and we'll look over here to see if it runs for us. Perfect. It just ran, and that's still passing. All right, so I'm going to start another one that's just kind of the opposite, but I'm going to show you what you can do to reach into a component and change things like state. If we do show, it should show our comments. What we can do is we can say, we can go in and right off the get-go set the state. If we do result dot set state, so you can call any component inside of that, or any function inside that component, if you just by result dot whatever. So we'll set the state here. We'll say for this spec, we want to start the state with display as false. And then we're just going to go through and test kind of exactly the same way we tested this one. For time's sake, I'll just copy paste. So we're going to go in, make sure that everything says what it does, click the button, and make sure that it changes. And we'll save that and see if it still passes. And it looks like we have an error, so let me fix that real quick. Comments. Oh, right there. Change my variable names. Oh no, I did not initialize this. That's important. Your specs are self-contained, each it. And so things from one will not carry over to the other unless you do it up in the before each. There, perfect. All those are passing. Then in addition to that, we can test to see if it's getting its props correctly. So we passed in these props up here, and we can check to make sure that it's handling those and displaying those like it should. So we'll just do it displays comment props. And for those, we're just going to use simple text content kind of things. We'll just do expect React DOM find DOM node of result to text content to contain. We'll see if it contains our first comment. Save that and see if it comes over here. Yeah, so it looks like it's displaying the first comment. And then if you have OCD or just want to be sure, you can test to make sure that it shows all your props. Put all those in. And it looks like we're still passing. Fantastic. So the next one, what we're going to test for is the reply button. So this button right here that saves it. And we're going to do it a couple different ways just so I can show you what different ways there are. The first way is using spies. Spies are a way that it's a Jasmine thing that they've got so you can stub out functions and use them sparingly, but they can come in handy if you need to test functionality like functions. So we're going to go saves the reply using, we're going to test it using spies. Just throwing that in there just so we can see for the video. And so to do that, what you do is it's called spy on, and this is what stubs out the function. And so our function here is our reply function, and it makes a call to the store, and that's what we're testing for. So we'll go spy on, you pass in the result, and then the name of the function in a string, apply, and then what we can do is we can simulate clicking that second button. Button 1 is what it is. We'll simulate clicking that button, and then what we can do is we can say expect, and because we spied on it, we can say result dot reply ought to have been called. And so what that just does is it checks to see if the function was called or not. And it looks like it was called, that spec is passing. And there's a lot you can do with spies that we're not going to go into in this video, but you can set return values or you can call a function with a certain value. Yeah, there's a lot. If you want, you can check out the Jasmine documentation on it. It's pretty cool. There's a lot of neat stuff you can do with them. But we're going to write a better test because that test doesn't really test functionality. It's just you can do this. So what we're going to do now is we're going to say it checks it it saves the reply, and we're going to check the store just to show that you can do that inside your specs. Checking the store. So in order to do that one, what we're going to need to do is we're actually going to have to reach into the component itself and set the value of that reply box to something. So we'll go react DOM dot find DOM node of our result. And then what we need to do, or actually, I think we're going to search for the component inside of that instead of trying to render it and search for it. So what we can do is we can say test utils dot find render DOM component with tag. We stretch this back out. And then our tag, which can be result. Our tag is our input tag on that screen. And then what we want to do is set its value. So now that we found the node, we can go in and set the properties of the tag. Equal to tests or neat. And then we'll simulate clicking that same button that we clicked before. And now what we're going to do is we need to import the store up here at the top. So we'll go ahead and we'll go import our comment store from or /comment. And now what we can do is inside the comment store, how we're getting the function in the parent component of this is we're calling comment store dot, I believe it's get comments, yeah. And so we can expect comment store get comments to contain there we go, to contain our tests are neat. All right, let's go ahead and see if that guy passes. Perfect, that guy passes too. And probably the best way to test this component is actually to see if it renders to the screen, but it's a little bit lengthier than the other ways we've tested, but we'll go ahead and do that one just so, like I said, this one's probably the best way to test. So we'll see if it saves the reply by checking the component output itself. I can spell these words correctly. Component. And so what we'll do here is, like we did before, we will go ahead and we'll set the value of our text box. Then we will click on our button. But this time, we want to see if the props are getting passed down. And so we have to re-render our component one more time because the props are with different props. And so we'll set the props before we render the component. We'll say props.comments equals comment store get comments. Let me change it to a different one just so we can be sure. We'll call this another test. Okay, so we'll get our comments from the store, and then we need to re-render our component. And so we'll go ahead and we'll say result equals testutils.render into document comment. With our props. Then we can go ahead and test to see if that worked. So we'll just grab our expect, not there. React DOM dot find DOM node of result text content to contain our string right here, another test. And we'll go ahead and see if that works. And it looks like we're passing there too. Perfect. So those are kind of the ways that you can basically test components. A few things I'm just going to mention here at the very end is if you want to test components that are rendered on multiple places but receive props that are going to be acting differently. So for example, this component right here, I could either render it on the home page or on the about page, and I could pass in props to that to make it behave a little bit differently. And if there's a bunch of different things you want to do, you can nest describe statements in here. And then you just use that as a describe inside, and in here you do it before each. We'll say this describe is on the home page. And we can do a before each. I'll just copy this one. But in this before each, we're going to say home equals true. And then keep that stuff, and you can write a whole bunch of its or a whole bunch of tests that are specific just to the home page, and you can do that same thing for the about page. It does different behavior. It does something different. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can test. I hope this was helpful. And before you finish your spec, make sure you un-F describe it so that all the specs run. But yeah, that's kind of the basics of writing the Jasmine specs for our React components. Any questions?
No, this was great. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks, man.